After becoming third-party developers for the newly launched PlayStation, Namco had set their foot firmly into the 3D home console market with the release of Ridge Racer by the end of 1994. Bringing over one of their top arcade cabinets and turning it into a PlayStation hit proved to be a winning strategy with the drift-fueled racing game. However, big plans were already in motion to push more of the company's extensive arcade catalog into the next generation of gaming. Scattered among the streets of Ridge Racer, players encountered billboards that would resemble two other notable Namco titles, one being an intergalactic rail shooter from 1991, and the other a futuristic arena fighter from 1993. These billboards foreshadowed the highly anticipated releases of Starblade and CYBER SLED for the PlayStation, both due for 1995. But questions began to surface surrounding the challenges and expectations ahead, with their first release now already becoming a household name and a tough act to follow. Could lightning strike twice, or even a third time with these two? Alongside Ridge Racer, they represented the pinnacle of Namco's 3D arcade machines from the early 90s, so these weren't just your average games. However, as history would tell, things wouldn't go exactly as Namco hoped. Though unbeknownst at the time, both games would profoundly impact Namco's future and alter the landscape of the entire PlayStation platform. So where does the story of Starblade and CYBER SLED even begin? A story of two games that couldn't be any more different. You have a groundbreaking rail shooter about interplanetary space warfare, and an arena vehicle combat game with robotic competitive tanks, but that have more in common than you may think. Unknown to many, these two games are intricately connected through a special timeline. In fact, many of Namco's well-known and iconic games, especially of the space and sci-fi genres, are linked together sharing one thing in common: the UGSF, also known as the United Galaxy Space Force, a galactic military fleet that exists inside the universe which these games all share. This chronology can be seen in its entirety through a special website made by Namco, outlining key events across an array of diverse games. However, it is the company's legendary collection of shooters and shoot-'em-up titles that serve as the backbone. A collection established all the way back in 1979 with Galaxian, then followed by Gallagher in 1981. These two became the founding pillars of the UGSF chronology, before paving the way for many sequels and spin-offs, ultimately leading to the creation of a space combat simulation game in 1985, known as Star Luster, originally made for the Nintendo Famicom before being playable inside arcades with Nintendo's Versus system. But more importantly, the game's groundbreaking POV perspective would mark Namco's first steps towards more immersive gameplay for future games like Starblade. As sci-fi space-themed shooters continue to dominate the 1980s, the spark and idea for Starblade would stem from a desire to create new stories and new worlds, but beyond the pixelated bounds of two-dimensional games, by harnessing their new, powerful cutting-edge hardware, the Namco System 21 arcade board. And by April of 1990, following the development of their first 3D racing games, they would then build their first ever 3D rail shooter, Galaxian 3 Project Dragoon. At the time branded as the largest arcade game ever built, Project Dragoon was first showcased at the International Garden and Granary Expo in Osaka. Capable of holding up to 28 players, each equipped with gunning units inside a specially built panoramic room, while the action was projected using laserdisc projectors, all synchronized to the hydraulic motion unit in the center. The ride was so well received, they worked on bringing a similar experience to arcade as well, introducing a non-hydraulic 16-play version for select game centers, before producing the more compact Theater 6 arcade cabinets in 1992, built for 6 people to play Project Dragoon and later Attack of the Zolgear, with a singular flat screen and a lavish price tag of $150,000 US. However, somewhere in this 2-year timeline, during Namco's field testing, allegedly a single-player concept for Project Dragoon was also brought forward. The initial feedback from the tests would be underwhelming, yet would inspire the team to pursue a new project they believed showed promise. Under the direction of Hajime Nakatani, who today is the current president and representative director of Bandai Namco, this new endeavour would finally take shape under the Starblade name, and not only look to outdo Project Dragoon, but also take influence from some of the biggest names in sci-fi and space opera that ruled film, television and pop culture, with one focus in mind: to produce a video game that presented an immersive cinematic experience on par with the storytelling and spectacle seen throughout the Hollywood blockbusters of the time. September 1991. After a year and a half of development, Starblade would finally arrive for arcades for Japan and the other regions later in the year. Set in the year 2090, you assumed the role of a UGSF pilot controlling the starfighter known as Geosword. Your mission: to save the mother planet from the invading Red Eye by seeking and destroying the mechanized planet's power reactor situated there, and to return back home safely. Seems like a simple enough plan, but of course things are not what they seem. Following the opening cinematics, you will be launched directly into the midst of all the chaos, and attacked by a new dangerous threat of alien ships led by their flagship commander.
Located enemy flagship commander.
Through a few twists and turns, you must use the Geosword's only means of defense, the patented laser gun, to neutralize danger as you venture deep into the depths of space to complete your mission.
Geosword warp point is located. Warning. Entering enemy's defense line.
Throughout the journey, your team leader provides guidance via comm speaker by articulating your immediate surroundings.
Attack the starboard, Geosword. I'll take the port. Over.
But the challenges of Starblade demand skillful control over the relentless waves the game loves to throw up.
This is team leader. This is team leader.
Add in the fact that there are no power-ups, no short replenishments, or other ways to avoid oncoming threats, so it's basically shoot or get shot, and a good memory of the movement patterns, gradually improving with each run. Like for many of their previous shooters, Namco would opt for no background music for most of Starblade's core gameplay, instead favouring the crisp immersive audio from enemy ships, explosions and lasers, which was previously unattainable with older arcade boards. But for the game's key moments, the music is crucial. Starblade's iconic soundtrack, found inside Game Sound Express Volume 6, contains only just 4 compositions, but the renowned Shinji Hosoe would compose these pieces to elevate the grandeur of the opening briefing, as well as the climactic final battle. Looking inside the test mode, you'll find the standard board and sound tests, with adjustments available for coin settings, shield damage and difficulty levels. But included is the option to activate data sampling, also known as ADS mode, or bookkeeping, a feature commonly found in many arcade machines, tracking metrics like the number of game overs accumulated for each level, and then helps arcade vendors make adjustments to optimize the cabinet's playability. Despite its limited rail movement and relatively short gameplay, Starblade offered an unparalleled experience for its time, with cutting-edge graphics, presentation, and sound design. This was all greatly enhanced by the cabinet's integrated features, including surround sound, responsive lighting, the single-player cockpit with rumble setting, and the use of a concave mirror where it uses the reflection from the monitor on top of the cabinet to create a VR effect, immersing players in the boundless space seen inside the Geosword's cockpit. While the game performed well in North America, UK and Australia, it achieved astronomical sales in Japan, becoming the region's third highest grossing dedicated machine for the year of 1992. But in the aftermath of Starblade's launch, throughout the rest of 1991 and 92, an exciting new era for 3D arcade entertainment began to unravel. Sega would introduce their new 3D arcade board with the iconic Virtua Racing, leading to more impressive releases like Virtua Fighter and Star Wars over the next couple years. As for Namco, business was about to pick up, in addition to creating their Wonder Eggs theme park, with both Galaxian 3 Project Dragoon and SimRoad now among the main attractions there. They were also busy building more elaborate 3D arcade cabinets. But to cement their status over Sega, they'd prepare a trump card. Though it wouldn't officially arrive until the end of 1993, so before that time came, they already had a few aces up their sleeve with a unique rail shooter called Sorvalu, then a flight combat simulator, Air Combat, plus an ambitious third project, one that would be heavily inspired by a beloved Atari classic released in November 1980. A first-person periscope shooter known as Battlezone, where players destroy AI tanks and UFOs across a sprawling open world filled with obstacles. Namco's interest in the game reflected their own history with the vehicle combat genre. A month before Battlezone, they had already introduced Tank Battalion, which unfolds inside a Pac-Man-style maze, or rather an arena, paving the way for their featured titles like Battle City for the NES and Grobda, both in 1985, then followed by Assault in 1988, and Tank Force in 1991, which introduced weapon drops and power-ups. So now, fast forward to 1993, fueled by 6 remarkable titles under the System 21 board umbrella, that look to evolve further by putting their own spin on the Battlezone game. But instead of shooting as many targets as possible, Namco wanted the gameplay to feel and play like a fighting game, allowing you to battle one-on-one against an AI opponent, or even a real-life adversary, be they your friend or rival. This morphed into an idea originally called Macho Tank, featuring half-man, half-mechanical gladiators, but was quickly scrapped. And thus, after some adjustments, the CYBER SLED universe would come to life, with its distinctive characters, arenas, and high-tech vehicles known as sleds, drawing from the popular cyberpunk and dystopian sci-fi genres inside movies, anime, and the video games of the time. It provided the perfect backdrop for the competitive and destructive spectacle that was ready to unfold. September 1993. After much anticipation, Japanese arcades will get their hands on CYBER SLED for the first time, followed by North America 1 month later, and the PAL regions within the same year. Inside the underbelly of a gritty megalopolis, courageous individuals compete in merciless CYBER SLED deathmatches under the bright lights of a bloodthirsty crowd. With 2 modes available for single player, you can undergo training practice for beginners, or dive into versus computer combat, where you become one of the 6 unique pilots.
Madison Hahn, Marie Yamamoto, Hans Baird, Amanda Bates, Alan Stryker, Rexa Ironside.
Then with your chosen vehicle, you must push through a grueling 6-round gauntlet against the entire roster across the many different battle arenas.
Ready, go!
Once the fight begins, the goal is to deplete your enemy's shield using your laser guns and missiles. But there's a catch. You must accomplish this before the time runs out, and there's not a lot of time to work with, as your remaining time carries over to your next match. So you need to act quickly to grab those small time extensions after winning a match. But generously, you're given infinite tries to beat the opponent within the timer, simply respawning after every loss. But when that timer finally expires, or if destroyed on the buzzer, it's game over. Your score and kills are tallied up, and you'll have to start again all the way from the bottom. Underneath the game's competitive nature, the key to survival involves strategy. Firstly, mastering the game's unique controls, employing dual joysticks for the analog and strafing movements of the vehicle, while turning is controlled by one stick, and triggers are used to fire the weaponry. Secondly, maintaining awareness of your weapons and drops. The laser gun, for instance, overheats if used excessively, so use it sparingly. And the missiles, although very powerful, are a limited resource unless you can find drops scattered on the battlefield. Do note that the vehicles all have different limits on the number of missiles they can hold at once, plus shield drops are available as well, but even these are very rare. And lastly, utilising the walls and obstacles as cover while keeping a safe distance from opponents is also very important, because once in danger, escaping it can be very difficult. For those who can master these skills and make it to the final round will face their toughest challenge yet, the dangerous Damon Hargreave, who pilots the most powerful sled in the game. For the soundtrack of Cyber Sled, now part of Namco Express Volume 10, once again Shinji Hosoe steps up to the plate as the sole composer, combining synth pads and leads with funky bass lines for a remarkable jazz fusion cyberpunk sound. Inside the test mode, along with the standard coin credit and calibration settings, vendors can again utilise ADS, as well as modify the time limits and difficulty levels for both the single play mode, as previously covered, and the 2-play mode, which offers more competitive possibilities with its 3 distinct levels. For beginner, it awards the winner of the most amount of victories within the time limit, while the intermediate level decides battles in the best of 3, with special item drops featuring missile and radar jamming plus shield armor. And the advanced level inherits the intermediate features, but it introduces 4 bonus arenas, plus fog or dark effects for an added challenge. As one of the first competitive arena combat games, Cyber Sled also became one of the first deluxe cabinets Namco ever built, standing at 1.9 meters tall, with special lighting and seats allocated for multiplayer. The game garnered significant international success, including the 1994 AMA Expo, earning an award nomination for the most innovative new technology, before over time reaching the top seller charts over in North America and the PAL regions, but especially in the Japanese market, becoming their 9th best dedicated machine for 1994, on par with the likes of Air Combat, but trailing behind Namco's hottest new racing game. Just 1 month after Cyber Sled, Ridge Racer finally arrived in Japanese arcades, rapidly achieving global critical acclaim and spearheading the forward momentum of Namco's strong 3D arcade catalogue. Fast forward to 1994, where this momentum eventually grabs the attention of Sony, leading to the two entities establishing their long-standing PlayStation partnership. In the build-up to the console's big release, Namco launches an advertising campaign in Japan, featuring a lineup of their familiar 3D arcade titles now set to debut on the PlayStation platform. This campaign was later known to the North American and PAL markets a year later, under the Power by Namco tagline. But on December 3rd, 1994, Ridge Racer would become the inaugural release in the Japanese lineup as a PlayStation launch title. Despite the difference in graphic quality compared to its arcade version, the game's success relied heavily on preserving its ready-to-pick-up gameplay and intuitive controls that were also accessible for home console gamers. Plus, the addition of bonus content that was previously unavailable in the original also breathed extra life into the game. This new version of Ridge Racer would have become the PlayStation's first major hit, eventually selling over 1.46 million copies. With big shoes to fill, Starblade and CYBER SLED would come next in Namco's conversion lineup. The CYBER SLED project would be directed by the late Kazumi Mizuno, who had a hand on working on some of the company's greatest works, while Starblade would be delegated to a third-party company called High-Tech Lab Japan, who specialised in CG production, having done work on animated films like Akira and the Royal Space Force, before pursuing video game production. However, in order for these two games to be playable for the PlayStation, once again technical compromises had to be made due to their System 21 arcade boards. But would these compromises help them find success like Ridge Racer, or better yet, like their arcade counterparts? Namco diligently prepared for their respective releases over the next 3 months. January 1995. The PlayStation port of CYBER SLED would hit Japanese shelves, while North America and the PAL regions would also get a piece of the action within October and November later in the year.
Cyber Sled.
With the training mode scrapped altogether, players are now presented with the 1-player and 2-player modes, featuring the game's 6 starting pilots and vehicles, fighting head to head once more for the ultimate prize.
Ready?
While this new version of CYBER SLED preserves the core gameplay mechanics and soundtrack, it now features updated sound effects, a different announcer, plus more detailed realistic textures for both the battlefield and vehicles, compared to the flat shaded polygons from the original coin-op. For the 1P mode, advancing through consecutive rounds remains the objective. There's no longer the stress and urgency of a compulsory time limit, but there are now 10 rounds to overcome, and the stakes are even higher. You're granted only one life to survive all the way to the end, no infinite tries or continues. Then in the 2P mode, you choose from the 8 battle arenas taken from the arcade multiplayer, apply night or fog effects to the stage, and compete against friends under a best of 3 rules.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is today's main event. Who's going to be the strongest warrior?
The multiplayer on PlayStation uses a split screen, although the textures remain flat shaded compared to 1P mode, and there is no longer a third person view available, likely for visibility reasons. But the special drops make a return to spice up the gameplay. Plus, the night and fog effects on stages not only affect player vision, but also impact the markers and radar differently. But where the game excels visually, it doesn't have the same smooth, responsive qualities that made the coin-op exceptional. This could have been attributed to the console's lower resolution, but the main issue was the adaptation of the unique arcade movements to the original PlayStation controller. This combined the use of the D-pad to move and strafe, while using the trigger buttons to rotate, which proved sluggish and discomforting on the hands. What the game needed was fluid analog movement, where the PlayStation analog joystick, or Namco's eccentric Nijicon controller, provided the closest alternatives at the time with some extra cash. But this was only 3 years before the console shift to DualShock controllers. Unfortunately though, a number of the earlier games including CYBER SLED would end up not being compatible with the DualShock. To ensure the success of the console version, Namco needed to not only implement exclusive content, but also make sure there was enough replay value for the home console audience, and they brought over a number of improvements, including the increased rounds for 1P mode, the new graphics settings to swap the vehicle liveries between the modern or the classic arcade look, or the 5 additional vehicles and pilots, now unlockable with completed runs of 1P mode, or if you know the secret cheat code. But one of the most important integrations was the use of full motion video, which added immersion and depth, starting from the opening intro to merely before battles. But FMVs were mainly used for the ending cinematics, the other reward for defeating Damon Hargley in 1P mode, but these did very little toward anyone.
The winner is Marie Yamamoto.
Namco's later fighting games would use ending cinematics to enrich the character lore and story narratives. But for CYBER SLED, players instead got 16 seconds of a generic celebration before their pilots went back to the docking area. In fact, with the technology available, the PlayStation port misses every opportunity to expand the game's universe along with its characters, with the imagination left only to trivial in-game dialogue. Overall, CYBER SLED garnered mixed reviews, with gamers and critics having plenty to say about the multiplayer. But there was unanimous criticism over the awkward control scheme, and the repetitive cat and dog style gameplay. But ultimately, comparisons were drawn back to Ridge Racer, and CYBER SLED would fall short of Namco's expectations, selling just over an estimated 185,000 copies. In March 1995, for Starblade's PlayStation release, it would be renamed to Starblade Alpha, and first brought to Japan, then roughly a year later for Europe and North America in February and April of 1996. Inspired by the approach of Galaxian 3 Project Dragoon years earlier, which used laserdisc and pre-rendered graphics, Namco would assign the team at High Tech Lab to bring Starblade to the PlayStation, who had just completed a 3DO version of Starblade only months prior, plus leveraging their past experience with laserdisc titles like Pyramid Patrol, Rocket Coaster, and Hyperion. But now instead of laserdisc, Starblade Alpha harnessed the power of full motion video to illustrate the game. Full motion videos allowed for highly detailed 3D graphics without consuming excessive memory, and numerous PS games would soon take advantage of this medium thanks to the console's advanced compression technology. Starting from the main menu, with no game settings present, players are simply presented with two options to begin their journey with either the original arcade textures or their new enhanced realistic textures, undertaking the exact same mission as the coin-op.
Start. Number 1. Number 2. Number 3. Condition green. Checklist complete. Prepare for departure.
Geosword clear for departure.
Catapult release. 12.5 minutes to target octopus.
While Starblade Alpha commits to the original vision, without changes to the stages, sound effects and music, the lower resolution of the PlayStation resulted in a noticeably choppier visual compared to the smooth 60 FPS of the arcade version.
Located enemy flagship commander.
Yet this would be the least of Starblade Alpha's troubles, as a number of issues plagued the Starblade experience. Instead of offering unlimited continues, the console version provides only 3 lives. If those lives are depleted, players have to start again from the very beginning, but this proved challenging given Alpha's difficulty curve and inability to adjust the difficulty due to the lack of a simple game settings menu. Players control the Geosword's laser gun with the D-pad and fire with any of the 4 main action buttons, but the aiming system suffers from hitbox problems, plus low sensitivity, and often fails to keep up with the action compared to the joysticks of the coin-op. Much like many of the earlier titles, the DualShock controller would not be compatible with Starblade Alpha either, missing out on its analog capabilities, which would have been beneficial. The best alternative, to at least make it a bit more bearable, was the PlayStation mouse. Then after completing the game, there is no unlockable content at all, providing very little incentive for a replay, aside from attempting a high score. The only exclusive bonus feature included would be the CG swap option from the main menu. As a mere replica of the arcade version, critics and gamers would also have plenty to say about Starblade Alpha, showing praise for the visuals, but marking down the sloppy speed and controls. Plus, the gameplay and content would be too small for gamers to justify Alpha as a full-price console game. It was later reported that the original producer, Hajime Nakatani, expressed his disappointment with the development of Alpha because neither he or any of the original development team were able to oversee the project. While the game had some success in Japan, it would perform terribly in the other markets. In the end, Starblade Alpha also fell short of Namco's expectations, selling just over an estimated 160,000 copies internationally. On one side, a groundbreaking rail shooter, and the other an arena vehicle combat game. Two of Namco's flagship titles, born out of the 3D arcade revolution of the early 1990s, which introduced cabinets with cutting-edge visuals, sound, and immersive experiences ahead of their time. But when Namco brought these games to the PlayStation, Starblade and CYBER SLED faced challenges in the transition, while the others thrived. So what exactly went wrong? Was it just the technical issues of the ports? Or should more blame be directed towards the gameplay, which was perfect for the arcade world, but not suitable for the home console environment? Perhaps with more time and resources, their fates could have been different. However, as the industry moved forward to a new generation, the two titles gradually faded from the public consciousness, while their influence continued the evolution of their respective genres. Cyber Sled paved the way for a wave of vehicle combat games, including the likes of Assault Rigs, Virtuon Cyber Troopers, and Twisted Metal. This also coincidentally paralleled the sudden rise of competitive robot vehicles brought to the real world, which had cultivated a growing fanbase, and sparking the creation of popular TV programs throughout the US and the UK, Robot Wars, and BattleBots. And for Starblade, it left its mark on future rail shooters like Star Fox, Panzer Dragoon, and Rez. But how would Namco bounce back after the underwhelming PlayStation releases of Cyber Sled and Starblade Alpha? By 1994, Cyber Sled had already spawned an arcade sequel called Cyber Commando, shifting focus to single-player combat reminiscent of a beat-em-up. The game saw players defending a space colony from a rebellion, but it failed to crack the Japanese charts. Namco made the creative decision to steer their vehicle combat games away from home console, abandoning the cyber theme in the process, and setting the stage for the critically acclaimed Tokyo Wars in 1996, which introduced a battle royale style combat system with tanks inside an urban battlefield, well before PUBG or even Fortnite existed. These became the final combat games until the Bandai Namco merger, releasing their first of many Gundam titles, followed by the battle party game Tank Tank Tank. Meanwhile, following Starblade Alpha, Galaxian 3 is finally introduced to the PlayStation in 1996, featuring 4-player co-op multiplayer, a bonus side mission, plus laser gun aim and performance calibration. But the game ended up selling worse than its console predecessor. So then over the next few years, Namco shifted focus towards bringing their light gun shooters to the Sony platform. But in 2000, they returned back to their UGSF roots and remade their space combat sim game Star Luster into Star Axiom, which incorporated RPG story elements in addition to its free-roam combat gameplay. Then 1 year later, in hopes to continue the Starblade story, an arcade sequel was revealed as Starblade Operation Blue Planet, operating on their state-of-the-art orbs cabinet that fully immersed players inside with a semi-spherical screen and surround sound. But shortly after the reveal, due to the cabinet's high cost and the decline of the arcade industry, the project would be cancelled. By the turn of the new century, Namco had effectively moved on from the two beloved franchises. Though in 2005, Starblade was immortalized as a minigame for Tekken 5 on the PlayStation 2. Then following the retro renaissance by the 2010s, both games became available to play on various online platforms. Ultimately, the PlayStation was unsuccessful in catapulting the two games to the same heights of Ridge Racer, Tekken and Air Combat, yet it remains only a minor blemish in the stories of two games that became influential arcade hits within a now lost era. But for Namco, Cyber Sled and Starblade were creative pursuits pushing the technological limits of what an arcade machine could achieve, and they both successfully etched their own legacies, where today enthusiasts continue to play and preserve these games, ensuring they stand today as treasured cult classics. Hey guys, just want to say thank you so much for watching the second chapter in our Namco docuseries. Took a good 4 months, but had heaps of fun making this one. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you haven't already seen the first chapter on Ridge Racer, be sure to check that out as well. And stay tuned for more of these videos in 2024. But yeah, let me know your thoughts about Starblade and Cyber Sled down below. If you've played these games before, or if this is your first time hearing about them. Or would you even like to see Bandai Namco revive either of these two games? You be the judge. Otherwise, thank you guys again. This is Daz signing off. Take it easy guys, stay safe, and I'll see you at the next one.